After planning and preparing for your podcast as a whole, it's now time to start preparing for each episode. Hejsan hej! I am PixelPia. The basic structure of your episode should follow the 3-act structure of storytelling. You might even remember this from school when you were writing an essay that should have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And this is also the basic structure for many movies, books, and theater plays. So let's see how we can use this structure for our podcast. And now I will call it intro, main content, and outro. And let's start with the intro. The intro is where you build some suspense and want your audience to continue listening. It is also where you introduce yourself and your podcast to new listeners. In the intro, you need to summarize what the episode will be about and tell the audience why they should continue listening. The intro might start with a short musical jingle that is specific for your podcast that will create some recognition and familiarity for your audience. The length of your intro depends on what format you have in your podcast. Is it a solo podcast? Do you have a co-host? Or maybe it is a panel? But if we talk about a podcast episode that is between 20 and 30 minutes long, the intro should be around 3 to 5 minutes. Now let's take a look at the main content. This will be the longest portion of your podcast episode. The length will be dependent on what format you use. This can be the part where you have an interview or where you tell your story and build it up to its climax. This part can also be broken into different segments where you can use music and sound effects in between the segments to set the stage and build the mood that you want with your podcast. In my next episode, I will show you where you can use a script or a podcast outline to more in detail set up the segments of this part. So now let's take a look at the outro. Here you should summarize the most important points of your podcast. Most listeners remember best what they heard in the beginning and at the end of a podcast. So it's important that you make your message memorable by summarizing it in the outro. It's also important to connect your content to your listeners. In what way can this content help improve their lives? This is also the section for a call to action. That can be to send them to your podcast website to sign up for your podcast email newsletter, to download some free resources, and many other things. But I suggest that you keep it to one call of action in each episode and that you plan these so they best fit with the content of the current episode. If you had a guest in your episode, this is where you thank your guest.
Thank you.
And give any other types of credits to people you might have mentioned. It is also where you can thank your audience for listening and maybe even give them a little taste of what your next episode will be about. This is also where you can add some outro music, but this is not necessary. I hope this will help you to structure your podcast episodes. As I said in my next video, I will be a little bit more hands-on and take a look at some script and outline templates that you can use for your own podcast. Until next time, remember, never stop learning.